Welcome back, friends. This is practically the last session associated with the core elements of integrated marketing communication which we have been discussing up till now. In last session, we looked at the perspective associated with measurement and evaluation of integrated marketing communication, wherein you would remember that we discussed the aerial case study, the evaluation criteria they fixed for themselves, they pursued a campaign and then evaluated that campaign around those criteria and stated the difference and enjoyed the difference actually. That is how organizations they go for. And as we discussed last time also, there is a longitudinal context of analyzing and evaluating all the modes of communication in relation to each other, which is a difficult part, but expert organizations in due course of time have developed such kind of methodologies. Experts, researchers, they have suggested the modes and methodologies, and sometimes many of those, sometimes individually some methods, they are very helpful in pursuing the evaluation. You see, key now we will look into some key questions to consider in IMC evaluation test. The first is what to test. So, the elements related to this question are creative decisions, media strategies, budgeting decisions. Where to test? Should it be under the laboratory controlled conditions or should it be a field test, on spot testing? When to test? You see, pre-test or post-test. As we discussed last time also, should it be too late to test actually, or should we start from the very beginning? How to test? You see, there are several testing methodologies and guidelines and test methods which have come up in due course of time, and we will see some of those. So, let us first focus upon what to test. You see, there are some creative decisions which we should focus upon. The creative theme, idea that must be tested. You see, because we are focusing upon all the communication with reference to creativity, we are involving creativity and ideas there. So, those can be tested, how valid they are, because last time we talked about likability and creativity is associated with developing likability. Then next is to see the reaction and different message appeals of the target audience, reinforcing the brand position in the target's mind, using a variety of creative tools. So, that is what is to be tested. Then the major element which has to be tested is related to media strategies, using research to determine the most effective media vehicle which we should be using. And that is, and as I have been telling you continuously, when I say that choosing most effective media vehicle means we would be focusing upon that vehicle as the central mode, and then we would be integrating all other modes with that vehicle. Then media vehicle option, sourced effect, that is people perceive ads differently depending upon their context, and evaluating flighting versus pulsing or continuous scheduling. We have talked about that, you understand that very well. So, this is to be tested. Then again further under budgeting decisions, examining the effect of budget size on advertising, and here we must understand that sales only may not be an accurate indicator of effectiveness. So, we have to think in terms of a wider kind of a perspective when we are talking of what to test. Then comes in when to test. Before the campaign is implemented, so there are several methods which are associated with that, and which definitely is a very important element because that eliminates some of the mistakes that may happen. And then the next element is pre-test can occur at any time from idea generation to final implementation as such. Next is post-test, which is designed to determine if the campaign is accomplishing its predetermined objectives. Many a times everything is going right, we have done pre-test and now we want to do post-test again because we have to go for impact analysis. And then post-test also is designed to serve as input into the next period situational analysis, that what kind of a budget allocation we should be doing on this particular campaign, if it is like most as compared to several others, other efforts which we are doing, we should be focusing upon that. And you see, as I told you earlier, that advertising must be complemented with social media approaches or personal selling. So here what kind of focus deviation has to be done is decided through post test also. Where to test? Laboratory test, as I said, it has advantages that it is controlled by the researcher, and disadvantage can be that it is not under real settings basically. Field tests, wherein natural viewing circumstances we get to learn so many things. And then how to test? See, copy testing we talked about once, but just to reiterate that it is a form of market research that determines the likelihood of an advertisement success through consumers' feedback. And here there are some principles associated with positioning, advertising, copy testing, which state several elements. That PACT principles are related to provide measurements relevant to the objectives of advertising, require agreement on how results will be used, provide multiple measures to evoke more precise evaluation. Then there are 6 more elements associated with positioning, advertising, copy testing, PACT principles. And they largely surround the perspective associated with how to go about it, what are the considerations we should be having in mind. Then comes in the methods of measuring advertising effectiveness. It can be largely bifurcated into as we have just talked about, but I will enumerate few of those and then I will be describing few of those for you. So there are some elements related to pre-test methods and some elements related to post-test methods. Pre-test methods we have laboratory methods and field studies, and post-test methods we have field studies. Under laboratory methods, for pre-test methods we have consumer juries, portfolio tests, physiological measures, theatre tests, rough tests, concept tests, readability tests, comprehension and reaction tests. And believe me, most of them have evolved in due course of time, wherein experts have observed that these kind of methods can work, and these tests are very creative in nature, and experts, they have lots of experience and methodologies associated with conducting these kind of things, so as to derive the results which are relevant for the future campaigns. Under field tests, some dummy ad vehicles are generated and then those tests are conducted. Some on-air tests are also done during pre-test methods, under pre-test methods. Under post-test methods, there are penetration studies, I call them acceptance studies, acceptance tests, Gallup-Robinson impact test. There are several other thinkers who have given some test methods. This is a widely used method. Aided recall test, unaided recall test, triple association test, progress / sales effect tests. So this is the large bifurcation around that, and let's look at few of the aspects. You see, under laboratory methods, when we are talking about pre-testing of finish ads, some consumer juries are made, wherein consumers are used to compare, rank and evaluate an advertisement. Now these are experts who understand things, and they judge those elements which are shown to them. But here there are chances of halo effect, there are chances of specific ad preferences overshadowing objectivity by the consumer jury. Of course, they have their own thinking methods and thinking ways, but you see, the most important element is what we are trying to do is we are trying to eliminate the future mistakes. So, it is not necessary that we focus upon one kind of test at a time. We can use one kind of a test and then corroborate the results with other tests later on, so as to enhance the validity and reliability aspect. Then there are portfolio tests. You see, this is a method in which after looking through a portfolio of different versions of a particular advertisement, respondents chosen from the target market are asked to recall in detail those which they can remember. Simple method, but again this can be used as a corroborative methodology as well, or you can choose to go for portfolio test and then you can go for consumer juries. So, whichever way is convenient and strengthens the belief that this is going to work. Now, psychological measures. You see, psychological copy testing is a technique in which various methods including word associations, sentence completion, depth, interview and storytelling are used, and catalog of reactions, namely security, fear, nostalgia and so on are set. So one has to go for that, although fear must not be used always basically, because it should not be the approach, and we have talked about that in ethics as well. Alternative ads are then rated based on how readers respond, and the psychological technique is, though it is difficult to implement since skilled interviewers are required, it is definitely helpful in bringing pertinent results. Then there are theater tests. Target consumers are invited to theater, laboratory, you may say, a place where they can view the program to preview and evaluate the advertisements. Now, before the program commences, details regarding the respondents' demographic and attitudinal details are recorded, and they are asked to nominate their product preferences from a list. At the end of the viewing, their evaluation of the program is sought, and they are also requested to complete their product preferences a second time. The main outcome of the process is a measure of a degree to which product preferences change as a result of exposure to the controlled viewing. It is as good as previewing a movie, wherein the early response tells you what to edit, how far to go for as far as editing goes, and if it is not liked at all, then to shelve it off completely. It is a common exercise which is utilized by several organizations, wherein they bring in audience to watch what has been developed. So, then there are rough tests. You see, a rough commercial is an unfinished execution that may fall into three broad categories. One is animatic rough, that includes a succession of drawings, cartoons, rendered artwork, still frameworks and simulated movement. Then it is the second is photomatic rough, successions of photographs often showing real people, scenery, etc., with still frames and simulated movement. And third is live action rough, which employs live motion, stand-in involvement, often with non-union crews, limited props and opticals and location settings. So, this also encompasses a testing methodology. Then there is concept testing, which is very important, because you see, at the development stage there are several elements which come to our mind and we want some input on that, because if we somehow keep on forming it in due course of time and we are not doing it right, then it would not be helpful, and we all know why. You see, it is conducted early in campaign development. It explores consumers' reactions to ad concepts expressed in words, pictures or symbols. If the concept is not right, then whole thing would not be right actually, and if the concept is acceptable, then thing can be built upon, and we can keep testing the situation, the copy and the video in the initial most phases, and we can go on and on to the stage of theater test, or let us say other reactionary tests associated with laboratories. So, the methods associated with concept testing are wherein alternatives are exposed to consumers who match the target audience, reactions and evaluations sought through focus group, direct questioning and surveys, and focus group discussions are very important for such kind of things basically, wherein the moderator just observes what they are discussing, and these are informed audience, they understand what they are talking about. Sample sizes depend upon the number of concepts and consensus of the responses, and we have talked about that in integrated marketing communication research as well, in a brief context. And it uses several types of qualitative or quantitative data for evaluating and comparing alternative concepts also, wherein what has already worked, what may work, we may hypothesize on that, and there are several methods we can talk about. But the most important is reflexive methodology, wherein we discussed that in integrated marketing communication research earlier as well. Then there are readability tests. Now in this test, the ease of readability is ascertained by a series of questions and techniques developed by psychologists before the ad is relayed. Very important, because this actually focuses upon the impact of the words and how they would actually be acceptable to the mind of the reader, the prospective consumer. Now this technique ascertains the depth of understanding of the reader through the advertisement actually, how far it would, and we talked about content writing or content marketing basically, content marketing communication. So these kind of things can be utilized for that as well. You see, you are developing a large content, for example, and you would be flowing that in the form of a published material, and if it doesn't fits the situation, for example, you are developing a coffee table book, and somehow you have not tested the whole thing, then it might not end up coming your way in terms of the results, and that is where all such tests are very helpful. Comprehension and reaction tests. You see, these are designed to assess the responses, which makes you wonder sometimes why some ads are ever brought to the marketplace. You see, if these tests are not rightly done, then consumers, they don't they feel like that there is no resonance between what they are saying and the product, and somehow those have to be eliminated beforehand. It somehow is detrimental to the image of the product. And tests of comprehension and reaction employs many standards, and there are several procedures associated with that. You see, personal interviews, group interviews, focus groups we have talked about, they have been all been used for this kind of a purpose, and so on. An appropriate sample is chosen for this, but there is no single formula which would justify. If you are going for a very large universal global campaign, then definitely you have to think about the thing in a larger context. Then there are field studies. Now those are related to dummy ad vehicles and on-air tests, and just to give you a glimpse, you see, dummy ad vehicles are related to being a mock-up of a media vehicle, magazine, flyer, used to test advertising effectiveness with a representative group of target market. And these magazines are distributed to a random sample of households who are asked to consume the magazine in their normal way, read that magazine, and readers are encouraged to observe the editorial, and at later date they are asked questions about both the editorial and the advertisements, and then it has to be analyzed. You see, you want to know how the real product or the real message would work. Then let us try and understand briefly how post tests of finish ads, that post testing works. And as I said, it is related to field studies largely, because no laboratory test scope is there. So then there are inquiry tests associated with that, which are designed to measure advertising effectiveness on the basis of inquiries generated from ads appearing in various print media, and the inquiry may take the form of the number of coupons returned, phone calls generated, direct inquiries through reader cards, and so on. You have already devised the methods that if this happens, then it is a positive result. Recognition tests are there, which are very important, and these tests determine the readership of the advertisement in the newspapers and journals, and they were largely developed by Dr. Daniel Starch in 1920 and known as, favorably known as Starch test. They require participants, again varying in number depending upon the size and the scope of the campaign, to thumb through publications that they normally read, looking at the ads, they go along and provide specific responses, particularly if they saw a certain ad in the issue. Then there are recall or impact tests. This is again very important because recall is the sole purpose of integrated marketing communication to an extent, and then comes the persuasion as a purpose, and we have talked about those kind of things. You see, purpose defines evaluation and measurement and methodology as such. So, the recall test is designed to measure the impression of readers or viewers of the advertisement, and if a reader has a favorable impression of the advertisement, he will certainly retain something of that advertisement, and that is how the story goes on. There are several elements to that, and you see, the measures of interest would be obtained by interviewing the readers or viewers or listeners days after the advertisement or commercial has appeared in the newspaper or TV, after a particular duration. And you see, recall or impact tests can be broken into two forms, aided or unaided, wherein in aided, it goes by measuring the memory of the respondent by asking them to recall what they saw on the given advertisement with some clues, some support kind of. Unaided, it's completely without any clue or those kind of things. We have to see the intensity with which they may remember what they have seen as a message, and that talks about likability, creativity, effectiveness, and so many things can be concluded from that if we go by the right analysis. Then there is Gallup-Robinson impact test. It's a commercial research firm which has formulated standardized aided recall test to survey advertisement impact, and it is also known as combined recall test. The respondents are shown magazine cover and is asked whether he or she has read the issue, and if yes, then the respondent is asked to describe anything she or he remembers seeing in that issue. Now, this is how it goes, and then the respondent is then given a deck of cards with brand names on them which appeared on the issue and is asked to indicate which ones she or he remembers seeing that issue. Then there is sales test, which is again very important, you see, to check how much an ad campaign has succeeded in generating an actual sale on the ground basically. And there are several personal selling approaches, or let us say influencers related approaches, or let us say direct marketing approaches, or let us say direct awareness generating approaches. For example, whenever medical representatives, they go to doctors and demonstrate about the products their company is marketing, they put it in front of them, they demonstrate about the usage of the product, they introduce those medicines to them, and they introduce the new researches associated with those kind of things. Doctors, they think about that rationality, look into the validity of the products, the perspective associated with that, the usability and the betterment of their patients. And then the medical representatives, the field pharmaceutical representatives, they go to the medical shop to monitor that how many prescriptions are being prescribed that particular kind of through that particular kind of an exercise. Now, this is how sales test, this is just an example, there are several other examples related to that. Attitude change is one of the most important elements when we talk of testing. Now, the influence of advertisements and promotional tools in shifting the opinions of customers about the company is analyzed with the help of attitude measurement tests. Now, it is a common assumption that consumers only buy products for which they have a good opinion, and that is true to an extent. Advertising campaigns are launched by companies to change the opinions to the perspective in their favor, and definitely for the betterment of the customer also. The influence of advertising campaigns is quantified by companies to see its effect after the launch of the campaigns. Attitude change is one of the most important objectives IMC pursues, and that has to be tested deeply. Then there are split run tests. two different versions of the same advertisements are printed in the same press run of an issue of a particular publication, so that some of the copies contain one version of the ad and the other contains the other version, to see which is more effective. And there are several other very creative methods. You see, the purpose of the split run is to compare the effectiveness of the two alternate ad copies. Elements that are often tested are prices, copy appeal, layout, type of illustration, coupon offered or without coupon as well, premiums, rebates offered, and so on. So it actually brings in what would work more. So that can also be done. It's again a very creative methodology. You see, evaluating, once you think in terms of evaluating the overall IMC program, here let me quote a very prominent thinker of our times, Peter Drucker. Now, he identified goals that define overall well-being of a company. Now, let us start from there where we began actually. You see, and those the well-being of a company can be brought into, categorized into several goals. For example, market share, level of innovation, productivity, physical and financial resources, profitability, manager performance and development, employee performance and attitude, social responsibility. Now, if these goals are being reached, the IMC plan is likely in good order somehow, because communication has an all-encompassing effect. It actually enables the organization to generate awareness, develop brand image and get the results. So, you see, somehow we can think in terms of evaluating the impact of IMC by looking at the organizational goals as such in terms of health of an organization. And you see, just to mention here that this is how an overall impact can also be seen in terms of IMC evaluation. The perspective here is that good measurement and right criteria may not only bring in larger results, but also can support in adhering to the ethical path in marketing communication. You see, since we have talked about ethics in our last section, I want you to recall that and to see that somehow if we measure our communication well, we may immediately understand. For example, in pre-test stage, if we are measuring it right, evaluating it right, we may immediately understand that it would pursue ethical standards or benchmarks or no, because here we have several methods which can indicate that. So, I urge you to keep in mind as marketers, as future marketers, that we should be focusing upon that element while testing the effectiveness and impact of advertisements also. Post test also we should be thinking that way, because if we monitor that element, then trust would be much easier to achieve. And if an organization achieves trust of its consumers, loyalty is not far away. Ultimately, integrated marketing communication is directed to achieving larger stability and brand equity of an organization. With this, I end this session of evaluation and measurement related to integrated marketing communication. I will be seeing you in the next session, which is the concluding one, wherein I would be summarizing whole of the journey and talking about few prominent aspects of integrated marketing communication. I am sure you have enjoyed this journey till now and you would cherish it for quite a long time, while you would think that integrated marketing communication is really magic. Till then, goodbye, thank you.